because Kendall basically said, like she's sticking around. Like she didn't come down there, and if Joe said no, she was going to go home. Like she was going to stick around, and she told him that. So I think more than anything, and I don't know what the conversation, I mean, none of us know the conversations that have happened kind of behind closed doors, but it sure seemed like she needed a little bit more closure.
There is so much to discuss in Bachelor Nation, and I have called in an expert on all things Paradise, maybe all things Paradise Backlash. I don't know. Blake, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm good. There's literally so much to talk about. I know you cover The Bachelor on your Instagram stories, on your podcast, but I have to pick your brain on everything.
Yeah, let's do it. It was a wild week.
I mean, this might have been the best 4 hours of television in a minute. I don't like the double episodes, but this was worth it.
I agree. I was on the edge of my seat most of the 4 hours. I'm not going to lie. It was crazy.
Let's start with Joe and Kendall, because that's how this two episode week started. What were your thoughts on their conversation and kind of their different pages? It seemed to me that the audience was slightly confused on maybe what Kendall's, not intentions, but if she was there for Joe, if she, what they knew about what was going to happen, if they were both there and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I completely understand why maybe the audience was a little confused, because even I was, and I know the both of them, and I think because Kendall basically said, like she's sticking around. Like she didn't come down there, and if Joe said no, she was going to go home. Like she was going to stick around, and she told him that. So I think more than anything, and I don't know what the conversation, I mean, none of us know the conversations that have happened kind of behind closed doors, but it sure seemed like she needed a little bit more closure. But for Joe, it sure seemed like that was close. Like it sure seemed like he said over and over again, like I'm not in love with Kendall anymore. So as hard as that is for Kendall, she's sticking around. So what I think now moving forward is, since she decided to stick around, like everything that happens now is, it's on her. Like she could have left if she wanted, but if it continues to get harder for her to watch him fall in love on the beach, that's kind of on her, because she can leave at any point. So.
Yeah, that's true. It was tough to watch a little bit just because of the flashbacks and Kendall getting kind of emotional. And I think it was a real conversation. It just maybe felt like a conversation that they could have had not on the show, not shading them or anything, but it almost felt like too real. Like this relationship was too real for this show.
Yeah. Well, and I will say about the conversation itself, like, it was a pretty mature conversation on both their parts. Like there wasn't any pettiness. There wasn't any real they weren't like throwing insults at each other. It was a pretty mature conversation. But yeah, I agree. It was a little strange to have on the beach, but clearly Kendall needed it. So I guess I can't blame her. If she needed it, she went down there to have that closure.
Yeah, and it was sad because it was also very real. I mean, Joe's point that I wanted you to move to Chicago and I should have been more than just a guy, but Kendall's point that she didn't want to necessarily move for a man, both valid and just kind of sad and real. But clearly Joe is feeling it with Serena P, because he wanted to make sure that she felt okay and validated, and he was confused and scared, I think. But I feel like that said a lot about his connection with Serena.
I thought that conversation with Joe and Serena, too, when Joe went back to Serena after Kendall, was incredibly real and genuine, because he was literally like, listen, I understand if you don't want to talk to me anymore, this can get messy. Like, this might get messy, So I thought it was pretty real and, genuine. And the one thing about Joe is his conversations and his quote-unquote, speeches, they never feel scripted. Everything feels off the cuff and genuine, and that's who he is. And so I think obviously, we're seeing it, a lot of people can really relate to that. And I think a lot of people Joe's gained the most followers, I think, out of anybody other than maybe Natasha. I think people can really relate to his awkwardness and his he's very, his demeanor, if you will. So, I think he did a great job. And yeah, I agree. He is very into Serena, which I think he's even surprised about a little bit. I think he's shocked by how much their relationship is clicking and working.
Yeah, and I think they're cute, but I always go back to 23 years old. I don't know if she's moving to Chicago either, but that's for them to figure. Yeah,
you thought LA was bad. She's in a different country,
Yeah, I don't know if it's forever, but they seem cute on the beach.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see moving forward. And it's always you never know until they get off the cameras, and then that's when it gets hard. That's when the real relationship starts.
Yeah, I also feel like we're missing something, because by the second episode, they were all sitting at the same picnic table hanging out. And I feel like and then in the promos, it looks like maybe it's going to come back up again, but I feel like they're airing things in very weird order or something, because Kendall and Joe were sitting next to each other a lot in the second episode.
I completely agree. I can't figure out the editing at all this season, because we've literally only had 2 rose ceremonies. That's wild. In 7 episodes, we've had 2 rose ceremonies, and the whole thing, the Piper, Brendan, and then the Chris and like it's all very weird. Like the way they're editing this season, and I can't figure it out. I can't put my finger on it. Hopefully, we'll get when people start being able to do podcasts and stuff, we'll get a better idea of the way they edited things. But yeah, I'm very confused with the timeline as well.
Is there a generic, like, I don't know if it's different every season or whatever, but how many days that go by before there's supposed to be another rose ceremony?
Usually the average is 3, but they do stretch it. For example, that party that they threw last night, the like tight ass party or whatever it was, they do stretch it for that kind of stuff because my season was Chris and Crystal's wedding,
right.
And that was like a 5-day week with the rose ceremony being the 5th day. So they do switch, but usually average is 3 days.